forget what happened to the man who suddenly got everything he always wanted.
What happened?
He lived happily ever after.
Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our channel, Paws On Animation, and our podcast.
And today we're covering the original adaptation of the famous Roald Dahl book, Willy Wonka and the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, based off of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because they use both.
Yes, and since it's November, this is one of the movies we really appreciate and are grateful for.
Yes.
So if you've read the book, you know the story very well. Like Rascal.
Yes.
Now, a young boy named Charlie finds the exclusive golden ticket and sends him on the grand tour of Willy Wonka and his imaginative chocolate factory. And now this story has become a beloved pop culture classic. But
before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notifications on future podcasts and monopause videos.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, for subscribing and sharing our videos, commenting everything you do. We appreciate it so much.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we wanted to cover this because recently we had covered the Wonka movie starring Timothy Chalamet, and now it was met with some mixed reviews, but seemed to be very successful at the box office and theater. And this story is probably one of Roald Dahl's biggest, most popular stories out of all the books he's written, because it's been remade 3 times now in a completely original sequel.
Plus Tom and Jerry.
Plus we're getting an animated movie at some point. Plus a Oompa Loompa movie for some reason because Netflix. So we really want to go back to the very beginning and cover what made the original movie stand out so much that inspired more remakes.
And to tell you a little more as to why, although we love it, Roald Dahl did not.
Yeah, which was interesting to find out.
So for those of you not familiar with the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, it came out in 1971. It is an American musical fantasy film. It was directed by Mel Stewart from a screenplay by Roald Dahl, based, as we said, on his original book. It ran 100 minutes, and as far as the box office, it had a budget of $3 million, which was a lot then.
Right.
It grossed only $4 million at the box office.
Oh, so it didn't do too well back then.
Not how they would have perfected it to be.
Okay.
Cinematography was by Arthur Ibbotson, and I wanted to mention that because the movie, for the time it took place when you watch it, it was gorgeous, and it had so many creative elements, and they had really pulled out all the stops.
Right.
And having the stage and all the different decorations, the costume. That was something then that really stood out because prior to that, the only place you saw a lot of time and things being put into was The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And in some of the musicals that took place in the 60s.
Right.
So this was something very big that Paramount Pictures did back during that time.
Exactly. And for us, we think it really retains not only the spirit of the book, but also the lessons it was teaching. And out of all the ones he's done, I think this one's probably the most different one because he usually has his own way of making these stories. Usually focus on a kid, and they have adult figures who are very mean-spirited or cruel, but in the end they get their comeuppance for the treatment of the kids, and the kids end up living a happy life by the end. This one kind of switches some things around where a lot of the kids minus Charlie were the ones that were little brats, and the adults weren't so bad in here, especially Charlie's family. So he kind of did something different with this one altogether.
True. And trust Rascal, because I think she's read just about every Dahl book.
Yes, for sure. I think maybe 1 or 2 I haven't read, and that's it. And for this one, they kept majority accurate. It's only when they started remaking them, when they started adding new elements and changing things, and then straying away from what you enjoy about the story. But think about the thing itself. You're going to visit a chocolate factory where they make all this candy and everything. Of course, if that's a story that would stand out.
True. Now, filming took place in Munich from August to November of 1970. And Dahl was credited with writing the film's screenplay, but David Salsa was brought in to do an uncredited rewrite, and against Dahl's wishes, changes were made to the story.
Really?
And also other decisions by the director led Dahl to disown the film.
Really?
Yes.
So this So this really wasn't what he intended at all.
No.
But somehow it's become beloved. So interesting how that plays out. Now for those who like to defend the really bad movies, that doesn't happen all the time.
And this isn't a bad movie, and I think that is the thing that really worked for it. The person who did the rewrite somehow made it work.
Yes.
Even though it wasn't what Dahl wanted, it works as a film altogether. The musical numbers were written by Leslie Biscuits and Anthony Newley, while Walter Scharf arranged and conducted the orchestral score. Now, I want to mention this because there are a couple of songs that actually received nominations for Best Original Score at the 44th Academy Awards, and Wilder was also nominated for Best Performance in a Motion Picture, Comedy or Musical at the 29th Golden Globe Awards. So the film introduced the song The Candyman, which went on to be recorded by Sammy Davis Jr. and became a popular hit for years. I think even into the 80s, people were singing that song, and so was he.
Wow.
And it's become highly popular. Even still today, when people hear that, they think of the Sammy Davis Jr. version before thinking of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay.
In 2014, the movie was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So it's interesting that he didn't like it and disowned it. And he died some time ago.
Yeah.
And to find out that it's become that beloved, I wonder how he would have felt if he had lived to see how much people love it.
Exactly.
Would he have changed his mind?
Yeah, exactly. And now that you mentioned Gene Wilder in the role, this is considered one of his best roles in movies. And you already know him for doing comedy anyway, even though he has a range of different roles. But for here, basically, he played the role so well you can't really see anybody else playing Willy Wonka.
Yes.
Because even no matter how many times they've had these remakes or reimaginings or whatever, you always gotta live up to Gene Wilder. That's why Johnny Depp was sort of not received too well, because he was too weird, because of the director.
But I did,
yes,
surprisingly, I did like it.
Right.
But this is my favorite.
Right. And you had Timothy Chalamet in Wonka, who you could tell was mimicking the mannerisms of Gene Wilder, but he didn't have the same feel and presence as Gene Wilder, because this version of Willy Wonka has sort of a dark edge to him. Not something really creepy or anything like people like to write now.
And I think you and I had discussed that, and I never mentioned to you that I think part of that was Wilder himself. He had this tendency, when I watched his biography on Netflix, he had a tendency to add that to his characters when he did them. So he actually put his own stamp on it by the way he chose to portray it, not because of the book.
Right.
And I think that's why Depp and Chalamet could not duplicate or recapture it, because it was just a part of his personality that he lent to characters. Even Mel Brooks said he has this way of adding that darkness, and it's funny you say that, to characters, but the characters are still funny, and you still are enamored by them. So it's so interesting you said that.
Right. And we said that because when you see him, and he is still kind at the end of the day, especially to Charlie, because you see how he ends up getting the factory. And the really big thing you always notice is that Charlie's the only one who seems very genuine when he's on the tour. All the other kids that won the tickets, or really just found a way to get it, are brats. They're all brats in their own way. Yes. And you see why they don't get the reward. It was a big lesson.
They're Princess Morbutts.
Times 5. And when you get there and they kind of want to start eating the stuff or messing with things, at first they tell them, I wouldn't do that. This is still experimental. It'd be very dangerous and stuff. And the kids still do it anyway. And then he's just like, oh no, there they go. And he's like, doesn't care anymore because they've just went and did this. And look, I warned you. And that's what was missing from Wonka. He was so, now there's nothing wrong with clean, but he was so safe, played safe and downplayed that it was just, he's supposed to be sweet and charming. Yes, it was supposed to be sweet, charming, attractive, and all that. But he didn't get to stand out as much as Wonka because there was nothing but he's just a nice guy.
It was a good performance, but it wasn't memorable. And
right,
I can
that's
understand
it.
that.
And that's it. This is why you gotta live up to.
Now I want to discuss some really fun facts, like Bennett says, about this movie. So we'll get back to Dahl disowning the film. He was infuriated by the plot deviations.
Really?
And he considered the music to be saccharine, sappy, and sentimental. And again, it's funny you say that about Wonka.
Yeah.
Because maybe they took a page from there and decided, hey, we're going to even up the ante on being
Sassy.
saccharine.
Yeah.
And he was also disappointed because the film placed too much emphasis on Willy Wonka and not enough on Charlie. And because Gene Wilder was cast as Wonka.
Right,
He
yeah,
wanted
to start the
someone
time.
named Spike Milligan, who I have no idea who he is. I'm not
No.
familiar with.
Me either.
But he was Brit.
Okay.
And I guess maybe like J.K. Rowling, he wanted a British person
That's
to do it.
possible, to be more authentic at the time.
And in 96, his second wife, Felicity, commented that her husband's objections toward the film, that, quote, they always want to change a book storyline. What makes Hollywood think children want the endings changed for a film when they accept it in a book? And I'm going to say Artemis Fowl.
True.
To kind of support that. But again, the thing is, we actually love this version.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted you to share something you shared with me about the book, that another big change most people don't know is that the family in the film is Caucasian, but in the book, the family was African American.
Yes, and you can't tell in the book because this change was made before you even started writing it. And that was supposed to be why Charlie's family was in the state they were in. They were struggling, and he was rewarded with this factory because of his positive attitude. He still stayed true to doing the right thing and not being like a brat like the other kids. So it will all line up with him getting the reward and then moving on up, I guess, if you know the reference. But he was told that he could not have a protagonist like that in the story, and was told to change it to a Caucasian kid instead of Caucasian family. He said, well, no one's going to know the difference because of where the story takes place. So if that is ever used in another remake of this story, this will be one of the rare times you say, okay, this was the original thing. We'll accept this. Knowing that we will accept them having a different kind of cast in the role like that.
But I thought that was interesting. And it's never mentioned and no one ever says anything.
Right.
And I think it's funny because if it were the opposite, it would be brought up.
Right.
But for some reason in this, it isn't. Now, this movie actually disappeared and became obscure, believe it or not.
Really?
And then in the 80s, it actually had a resurgence in popularity due to repeated TV broadcasts. And it's kind of like Uncle was telling us about It's a Wonderful Life. Nobody wanted it. And so they would play it on TV every year for free all the time. And then when people got into it and it became a holiday staple, then I think Ted Turner bought it and got rights to it. Yes. So that they can make money off of it. Now, here's how obscure it became. When the distribution rights lapsed in 1977, Paramount declined to renew them, considering it not viable. And the rights defaulted back to, believe it or not, the Quaker Oats Company.
Quaker Oats.
Which no longer was involved in the film business. And then they sold it to Warner Brothers.
Oh, gosh, it just went from person to person.
For $500,000, which during that time was quite a bit, but now it's chump change when you consider how much this movie has made.
Wow, yep.
And Waldner engineered this rights sale to Warner Brothers, where he became a corporate director after selling his production company to Warner Brothers the previous year. So this movie really wasn't valued. And again, now it's become a favorite and popular. It's gained cult status, and its home sales for DVD still are large, believe it or not.
Wow.
In 1996, it had its 25th anniversary, and it had grossed another $21 million by that time.
Wow.
Made only 3 at the theaters, but by that time, it had grossed another $21 million in home sales.
Right.
Home sales, not theater.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
See, a lot of people love to see it.
And it also was nominated by Entertainment Weekly as one of the top 50 cult movies of all time.
Really?
And it's number 74 on Bravo's The 100 Scariest Movie Moments.
Oh my gosh, yes, with
Because
that
of
scene.
surreal visuals.
Yeah.
And the scene has also been interpreted as being a psychedelic trip, though the director denied that was his intention.
Oh my gosh.
So it's interesting just how much this has become a staple of pop culture. There's a few more things we're going to mention before we get to the cast. But just from a book that Dahl wrote that probably was popular with children, not with adults, and then it's gone on in decades later to become something that's become a staple and the defining factor of his book, even though changes are made. So it's just odd how entertainment and life can work out when it comes to things like this.
Right.
So, as we mentioned, it's become a part of pop culture. The Simpsons have done a parody. Malcolm in the Middle.
Yep.
Futurama, Family Guy, Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi.
Yep.
South Park, Rick and Morty.
Oh my god.
And American Dad.
Oh, and Craig of the Creek with a slime factory.
Yes, true.
Well, they made a weird jab at Gene Wilder if you pay attention. I didn't get it.
Now, this artist named Marilyn Manson in 1995, he did a music video for the song Dope Hat. And it was influenced on the boat ride scene. And we also know, as we mentioned, they did a Tom and Jerry movie called Tom and Jerry, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
And.
Which was weird when you've watched it.
Right.
And an episode of the TV series Pawn Stars also did a combination of the original Everlasting Gobstopper and Walker Bar props. And they sold for $105,000 in 2017.
Wow. Okay.
So, we know Wonka also gave it a resurgence in 2022 or 23.
I think 23.
2023, with it being used as a reboot, I guess you could say.
And they're making their own prequel. Yeah. Since there was no origin story for Willy Wonka, kind of need one. They said, well, let's make one. And depending on how you think of the movie, it's either good or not so good. I will say at least they were trying to emulate it and put some things from past versions into it. At least they were trying.
And they definitely did a heck of a lot better than Disney would have.
Yeah.
Although, remember, I kept thinking it was Disney for some reason.
Yeah.
So quickly we'll go over the cast. Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. Jack Albertson as Grandpa Joe. Peter Ostrom as Charlie Bucket. Roy Kinnear as Henry Salt. Julie Dawn Cole as Veruca Salt. As one of the bad kids. I'll just go down the list because actually none of us are familiar with these people now.
Right.
Leonard Stone, Denise Nickerson, Dodo Denny, Paris Timon, Ursula Wright, Michael Bollner, Diana Soul, Aubrey Woods, David Batley, Gunter Meisner, Peter Capel, Werner King, and Peter Stewart as Winkleman.
Oh my God.
So we know you've seen this movie. Tell us what you think in the comments below. And also let us know which version is your favorite. Is it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Wonka?
Right.
If you haven't seen
or
it...
Or the Tom and Jerry for some reason.
Yeah, I was going to pretend that didn't happen.
Oh!
And if you haven't seen it for whatever reason, this is a good time. We've got the Thanksgiving season and this is the winter holiday season. Give it a watch. Come back and tell us what you think. We know you're going to love it. And it'll probably become one of your favorites to watch more than one time.
And if you don't already, subscribe for updates and reviews for anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, subscribing to our channels, sharing our videos, commenting. We appreciate everything you do. As always,
you are special. Thank you so much for watching Rascal Entertainment.
And then Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.